Help support the show by going to the Amazon.com search bar on footballsamerica.com when doing your online shopping. There are no charges to you, just support, and it will take you right back to the Amazon website. This month, Footballs America podcast listeners will get free shipping on any order over $35 when they go to footballsamerica.com/Amazon. Again, that's footballsamerica.com/Amazon.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Football is America with Ron and Kyle. I'm Ron.
And I am Kyle, and today we are going to talk Cowboys football with editor and writer Tom Ryle from bloggingtheboys.com, which is the SB Nation Cowboys blog page. We are very happy to have Tom with us here today. We are really excited about talking about America's team. Tom, thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for acknowledging the proper title for the Cowboys. We always appreciate that when people ask for it.
Yes. All right. So since this is going to be the first time for a lot of the fans of your page, hearing your voice, we're going to give them a chance to know a little bit more about you. First off, how long have you been a fan of this team?
Well, that's giving a little bit away because I can remember Dandy Don Meredith throwing to Bullet Bob Hayes back in the mid-'60s. And that was my introduction to pro football, living in the Dallas area when, they came on. A few years in, I got interested watching it with my dad at the time and have been a Cowboys fan ever since. I think Tom Landry is one of the great figures in football. Roger Staubach is, just a legend for everybody and just a tremendous human being. And then got to watch the, second rise of the Cowboys when Jerry Jones and Jimmy Johnson were still able to get along. So I've been following them for a long time and then got into writing with Blogging the Boys about 4 years ago, right after Jason Garrett became the official head coach, and have been a huge Garrett fan since the day he came along. And my kind of niche with Blogging the Boys is I love to study what goes on with the dynamics between Jerry Jones, Jason Garrett, the coaching staff, Stephen Jones, who in many ways is the real nuts and bolts GM on a day-to-day basis, and then the great secret weapon, Will McClay, who runs the scouting department. I love to see the interaction, what's going on, and watching all the moves they make, and I'm very excited to be able to talk about the Cowboys defending NFC East champions. It's good to see them, once again relevant. They've always been relevant from a viewership stance, because whenever they put the Cowboys in a national game, it gets great ratings because for all the many Cowboys fans that are out there, there are many more that are just wanting to see the Cowboys fall on their face. So, we appreciate the haters as well as we do the fans out there.
Yeah, there's more than a couple, although I've noticed it's really been hard to find any Cowboys haters this past year. It was a little difficult to hate on a team when they're steamrolling everybody. So
yeah, and that was the wonderful thing about last year, especially after the preseason, after listening to all the talk about how the Cowboys were going to have the worst defense in the history of the NFL after losing DeMarcus Ware, Jason Hatcher, and then Sean Lee going down with an injury. Have the defense rise to the kind of middle of the pack, and Tony Romo have what was arguably his best year as a pro. Des Bryant out there just rocking it, and DeMarco Murray is now gone, regrettably, but also I think to a certain sense inevitably. Just to see them go out there and put on the show that they did, and come fairly close. I mean, the Cowboys were one of the teams that, with a few breaks, and if they have kept themselves together a little bit more in the last game against Green Bay, they might have been able to challenge all the way through to the end. But, still after, the 3-8-8 years and all the problems they had before that, it was so great to see them get back into the playoffs and prove that they belong there.
Now, you said you've been writing specifically since Jason Garrett was announced as the head coach. What was the real motivation there? What made you want to get involved? And now I see you're an editor as well. So what is the driving force for you becoming a professional writer?
I always wanted to write. My entire life, I've wanted to have people read what I put out there and comment on it. And I stumbled across Blogging the Boys at the time when I was working a job that had a lot of downtime and a computer with internet access. And nobody really cared if you were doing some other things while you were waiting for the next thing to come along. It was a public service job. And I got to reading it, really got to love the site. And SB Nation has a thing called fan posts where anyone that comes in and joins the community can then put up their own material. And I literally wrote myself into a job on the front page during the lockout. When there was so little for people to write about, I just started throwing stuff out there. And our editor, Dave Halperin, and the gentleman from Germany referred to as One Cool Customer took notice of me and extended an invitation to me. I took it, have run with it, and have been just loving what I've been doing ever since.
As you said, when you're going to go back and say, hey, you've been a fan since the days of Dandy Don, there have been a lot of memories you've made with this team, a lot of them. So this will probably be one of the more difficult questions we get out of you today. But can you tell me what is your strongest memory, good, bad, or otherwise, of this team?
The two worst memories are the catch where they lost the 49ers in the playoffs. You know, that one hurts. But probably a little bit worse is when Jackie Smith dropped the go-ahead touchdown from Staubach in that one Super Bowl game. It just hurt against the Steelers. That was crushing. As far as good memories, the two Landry Super Bowls were tremendous, and the three Super Bowls under Johnson and Switzer, although, the Switzer one's kind of bittersweet because you could see that was the team running on momentum and that they were losing it. And then, last year is always going to be a kind of a high point because I think it could be the start of something very good with Jason Garrett. It's kind of nice to have one of the big memories being one of the most recent things, too.
Now, going kind of into talking about last year, you've already focused on that as kind of being a high point, and you're excited about the future. Let's take a look at what was the 2014 season. We're going to take a step in a time machine and kind of go back to just right at the beginning of preseason last year, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The Cowboys, they're in cap hell at the time. They have to cut DeMarcus Ware. Sean Lee just got placed on IR during camp. The optimism that has Cowboys fans saying this is our year before another 8-8 campaign was just not there like it normally was. Most media members had the Cowboys as a 4 or 5 win team, finishing last in the NFC East. And after a preseason without any victories, there was a fear that the team would be as bad as the media foretold, and optimism was in incredibly short supply. The low point of the regular season was the opening day when the 49ers had their way with the Cowboys in Dallas, in a stadium that seemed to have more 49ers jerseys than Cowboys jerseys in fans. Then somehow the team goes on a tear, wins 6 straight, and only losing to the Redskins because Tony Romo is injured. Let's be honest. Brandon Weeden, we that's all we need to say about that.
Yes.
And the team finished with their best record last year in a long time with 12-4, making the playoffs, winning a playoff game, having the league's best rusher, the best O-line in the league that we've seen in at least a decade, and a quarterback who was a finalist for an MVP. Normally, we ask at this point if you, the guest, thought that last year was a success. But in this case, we're pretty sure that you're going to say that it was. So at least when you look at how it started and you're going back and kind of peeking back over the regular season and the way it came together, the whole year was just phenomenal. Give us what you think are the best accomplishments over the whole year. Well,
I go back actually to January when I think the they made the moves that really led to everything else, and that was they hired Scott Linehan to come in and be the real offensive coordinator, despite the fact that they let Bill Callahan carry the title for a while. And they gave the defensive coordinator job to Rod Marinelli. That was the foundation for everything that happened. Then Linehan actually stuck with the run, said he was going to go out there and run the ball, and did with outstanding success. And Marinelli, he's just a miracle worker. He can take bits and pieces and put together things and get something out of it in a way that's just phenomenal. That was the key. Oddly enough, then one of the things that really was a big thing that nobody, I think, realized at the time was when they took a flyer on Rolando McClain, brought him in after all the troubles, retiring from football twice, and put him on a, prove-it one-year deal. And then he went out and proved that he was an impact player and gave a tremendous lift to the defense. Then they had, some other things happen. They had a kid named Anthony Hitchens came in as a fourth-round draft choice, wound up starting at various games at all three linebacker positions and proved that he belonged in the NFL. He was a big step up. And then the other thing was just DeMarco Murray played out of his head and just had a tremendous season, managed to stay healthy, which was key. And they built it all on the foundation of those three all-pro offensive linemen. They invested 3 first-round draft picks, which everyone was kind of going like, what are they doing? It was such a 180 from anything the team had done to have them come along and prove that it was good to build your offensive foundation up front. It's the classic old-fashioned way of doing it. The Cowboys made it work, and that was just exciting as all get out.
Now, let's talk a little bit about the players and the personnel. As you said, Jason Garrett did a fantastic job leading this team through a lot of off-season adversity.
Mm-hmm.
And he had a tremendous year and did a great job, and nobody's doubting that. But on the heels of quite a few 8-8 years, how much goodwill did he buy himself? And I guess what I'm really trying to ask there is, will this erase the previous difficulties in campaigns? Will this get him that extra time he needs to continue forward? Or was this more of just a, hey, you had a good year, next year is an entirely different thing, blank slate kind of deal?
Well, the contract extension says a lot. I mean, Jerry Jones put his money where his mouth is and signed Garrett up to come back. He's going to have to prove he can maintain it. And in that, he's got to fight the fact that the NFL is built to be an 8-8 league. All the draft rules, all the things that the league does to try to achieve parity make it very hard for a team to stay above the line. There are some teams that seem very good at staying below the 500 line for some reason from year to year. And you have those few rare exceptions like the Patriots that just always seem to be there at the end. But Garrett's going to have to come back and prove he can do it again. I've got a lot of optimism that he can, but we're going to find out, of course, when they actually start playing real football in the fall.
Now let's talk about DeMarco Murray. I mean, leading the league in rushing, setting a single-season team record for rushing yards, which is amazing when you consider the previous record holder was all-time NFL rushing yard leader Emmitt Smith.
Mm-hmm.
So that is not a small accomplishment. That is massive. Now, what was it that really allowed DeMarco Murray to be so successful this year? Was it any one thing or just a crazy combination of everything going right? What do you attribute to his success?
The two halves of that are that they built the front line. They've got some maulers up there. Everybody talks about Tyron Smith, Travis Frederick, and Zach Martin, but don't forget that Ron Leary and Doug Free were key parts of that, as was the now departed Jeremy Parnell. They went up there and they opened the holes for him, and Linehan kept feeding him the ball. He kept giving Murray the ball. Of course, he had a tremendous number of carries, which I think played a little part in why the Cowboys were not willing to outbid the Eagles for Murray in free agency. But during the year, they had somebody that wanted the ball, that wanted to run, and they kept giving it to him, and it forced other teams to have to defend that. And when you're having to put an extra player into the box to try and stop the run with Tony Romo as the quarterback and Des Bryant and Jason Witten and that sneaky little Cole Beasley out there, you got a problem. And that's what the Cowboys were overwhelming people with, was they had just too many offensive weapons to be stopped. And they had a defense that could get off the field when it needed to.
When you've got such a dominant rusher and he's gone from one year to the next, there's obviously going to be some drop-off or some growing pains, or however you want to say it. But I would like you to kind of guide me through how big you think his loss is actually going to be and what the team is going to do in response. It's starting to look like getting Adrian Peterson would be far too costly. There's a lot of talent in the draft. What do you think the answer is going to be?
I'm hopeful that they're going to get one of the running backs in the draft. It looks like a very deep draft class. They look like they're real fond of the J.E., if I'm saying his name right, out of Boise State, and there's several other good options. The question is going to be, when are they going to pull the trigger? Are they going to try to sit on the 27th pick and get one of the earlier guys? Are they going to, put a little faith in it being a deep class and go second or third round, possibly trade back a little to pick up an extra pick or two? That's going to be key as to who they get and how quickly the rookie can transition into the NFL, which rookie running backs have done pretty well of late transitioning, so there's a lot of hope there. And then there's kind of a little bit of an X factor with Darren McFadden, with not having people meeting him 3 yards behind the line of scrimmage, as was happening in Oakland. What can he do? He may be able to give them a little bit of lift there. It's definitely, at least in my opinion, it's going to be more of a running back by committee. They're not going to put all the carries on one player unless they get forced into it somehow by the way the season plays out. They want to go out there and hit you with a guy and then bring in some fresh legs and hit you again. So, I could see him going a couple of series with whoever gets the starting job, then the number 2 guy coming in for a series and then rotating through it that way through the game and just eventually beating the other team down that way. So, are they going to miss Murray? Of course they're going to miss Murray. He was a known factor. He had a lot of ability. He fit the scheme well. He was not without his flaws. He sometimes would run right into the back of his own people or defenders when he could have taken a different direction and gotten another 10 yards. But he's going to be a player that they're going to miss. But I think they've got a good chance of filling in and getting those yards replaced. We'll have to see. That's obviously the bet that the team has made, so we'll have to see how that pays off.
Well, it's definitely less of a concern with the giant juggernaut that is the Cowboys offensive line. Just crazy dominant. As you said, there's a lot of talent there. Even the guys who are maybe not big name guys would still be starting on most of the teams in the league. So that's got to ease the transition for any incoming running backs. Any rookies are going to be looking amazing, I think. Can you tell me how much of an impact that line had on Tony Romo in the passing game?
Well, he's got to feel a lot more secure behind them. They're good at pass protection. Probably not quite as strong there as they are at the run game, but you've got players that not only are very good technically and that are talented physically, but especially in the interior with Frederick and Martin, you've got a couple of guys that just have nasty attitude. They don't want to just go out and win. They want to go out and beat the people into the ground. You need that, and the Cowboys have that now, and I think that's just a tremendous help. One of the big questions with the running back is always going to be, how is whoever comes in going to do on pass protection? Because Murray had a pretty decent reputation as a pass protector. So if they can get that out of whoever they wind up with as their starter and as their number 2 guy, then I think things will work out pretty well. And that does help Tony Romo a lot.
And let's talk a little about Tony Romo. Banner year. I think we all are kind of in agreement. This is arguably his best year in the pros. Mm-hmm. Just fantastic. He was an MVP finalist. obviously earned his Pro Bowl slot, got a playoff win, and he looked great. And one thing that I really loved about him was this year there was not a single incident, nothing at all, where you could say, well, the Cowboys lost in the fourth quarter and you have to acknowledge Tony Romo. There was none of that. Do you think that's going to change the perception of him as being a choke artist? Now, I know that not everybody thinks that, and if you look at the numbers, he actually has more fourth quarter comebacks and fourth quarter failures, but I mean, you know how it goes. One cancels 10 attaboys.
Yes, that's true. I don't really care that much. I get a little emotionally involved when people are slamming Romo in what I consider an unfair way and dwelling on the fact that he had trouble handling a field goal attempt a long time ago. That seems to haunt him forever, very unfairly. But he has always been much better than a lot of people that didn't really study the game and look inside the numbers, understood. He's still incredible back there with his spin move, getting away from oncoming rushers, being able to improvise plays when he has to. He has, particularly in Jason Witten and Cole Beasley, he's got a couple of people that he knows he can rely on to catch the ball when he gets it to them. He's very confident. He feels like he's playing his best football technically that he ever has. He's coming into this year healthier than he has in about 3 years. No back problems to deal with. He's going to be able to participate in the whole OTA and mini camp and preseason activities. So the training camp should go well for him. So it's looking good. And the Cowboys have basically made a 3-year bet on him if you look at the structure of his contract. They can get out from that contract after 2017 now. There's been a lot of discussion about that they restructured his contract again and has pushed more dead money out there. But they're betting on him having at least 3 years. After 2017, they can get out of it and start seeing cap savings. Will he be able to play the whole 3? We're hoping he will. He's one of the most determined, toughest players out there. If you look at what he's played through, there was that San Francisco game he played with a punctured lung. I mean, come on, how many players can do that and play at the level he does? So, yeah, Romo's our guy. I'm a big fan of his. I really want to see him get a Super Bowl ring so he can get the acknowledgement after his career that he deserves. But to him, the only thing that really matters is when he sits up and goes out there on Sunday and plays the game.
I've just never seen someone who can constantly take the beatings that he can. There's only a handful of guys I can say that about.
And one more thing about him is I've recently kind of been paying that extra bit of attention to him outside of games, and I noticed at the NFL Awards show this year, every other quarterback looked irritated to be there. Had that sort of look in their face of, man, the Super Bowl's tomorrow. I don't want to do this. I want to be at home. Furious. Aaron Rodgers was the worst. I mean, he looked like somebody just told him, you better eat those vegetables. You eat those vegetables. Like, he just looked furious. And Tony Romo sitting there, smile, laughing, jokes, great attitude. Just seems like a fantastic guy all around. Now, he doesn't have an infinite amount of years left. I mean, he can go ahead and RoboCop it up all he wants right now and play with punctured lungs and, his neck snapped around backwards. At this point, it wouldn't surprise me if he goes out there like, oh, no, don't worry, guys. It's just my arm out of socket. It's fine. I can throw. But what is the answer? Because we know it's not Brandon Weeden, unless the question is who sucks, in which case Brandon Weeden is the answer. But what is going to be the plan post Tony Romo? At what point is that going to be addressed? Or is that just not in the cards to really look at just yet? I know you're talking a bit about contract, but could you give me what is at least the backup idea? Something.
The only thing they've got right now, they've got a kid named Dustin Vaughn that they're, trying to develop and see what they've got, maybe see if they can have, lightning strike twice and have another guy come out of nowhere and become a starter in the NFL. But I think that the real answer is going to be in the draft sometime down the road. And the question is going to be, will they be able to hit on somebody with a later draft choice? because hopefully while Tony Romo's playing, they're not going to be up there in that top 4 or 5 picks where you need to get one of the real likely quarterbacks to hit. And unfortunately, that doesn't happen very often where you find a starting quarterback after the first or maybe second round. They may just have to ride Romo, and then when it kind of the wheels come off, and see what happens after that, or they may have to try to engineer a trade at some point and kind of mortgage the future, which I'm not a big fan of doing. I don't like the way Washington did it. I think Washington crippled themselves for years with the Robert Griffin III trade, which is kind of typical of the way Washington runs things. I don't know if they're ever going to get themselves straightened out, although they do apparently have a legitimate GM now and maybe can get something done. But the simple answer to that is they don't have the answer yet, and they're going to have to try and find it when the time comes. They're just going to have to play with what they've got right now. That's the unfortunate nature of the beast. You don't have many teams that can transition quickly like the Colts did, when they managed to go from Manning to Luck with one bad year in between and then saddle up and start riding again. That's maybe what Dallas is hoping it can do, is maybe have 1 or 2 down years and then get back into it with a new quarterback. But right now, I don't think they know the answer. And certainly this is not a year to be finding a good quarterback somewhere outside of the first couple of 4 picks or so, because it looks like there's 2 legitimate NFL starters out there and a bunch of guys that may someday become a halfway decent backup.
Yeah, I find it pretty universal that everybody gives me grief as a Colts fan. Just like, yeah, you got Andrew Luck, you go right to hell. Like, all right, I'll take that hatred, sure. Fairly deserved, I suppose. Now, the last guy on offense I feel we really got to go over is Dez Bryant, because he had a great year in a lot of ways. First game with 3 touchdowns in one game, that's fantastic. The smarter player to franchise, I mean, between him and DeMarco Murray, as you said, with all those touches and the easy replaceability of a running back, you got to go with Dez. The thing I kind of want to know is, we saw a great deal more maturity out of him this year. No tantrums, no fits. When he argued, you were always arguing with him in your mind, like, yeah, the ref was wrong. I don't know how you can make that decision. So has he truly matured, or would you say that this is potentially just a situation where when your team is winning a lot, it's easier to keep a level head?
I think part of it is just the fact that he did grow up some. He had a really rough childhood. He's got a lot of strikes against him. The biggest problems that he's had seem to generate from the people he's got around him. His own family's fairly toxic in some ways. So hopefully he's gotten beyond that. It seems like his feelings were a little bit hurt that they didn't go ahead and work out a deal. And the sticking point right now simply seems to be how much guaranteed money and how long the contract's going to be, not so much how much they're going to pay him here, because I think the Cowboys, Jerry Jones in particular, are willing to step up and pay him. They just have shown an extreme reluctance to commit a lot of money to players for several years with a lot of high guarantee, because they got burned so badly by that back in the past 10, 15 years. They were signing people based on past performance. They were giving them huge contracts, and that's not a successful way to do it in the NFL. You have to structure it so that you're going to pay them for performance and have some escapability if things fall off the edge of the table. So right now I'm hoping that they can get through that. We'll see what happens when the OTAs roll around, see if he wants to try to hold out a little bit to try and put a little pressure on the team to go ahead and sign into a long-term deal. Everybody wants the long-term Cowboys for life deal with him. It's just a matter of getting the dollars worked out. And we'll have to see how it plays out, but I'm reasonably optimistic it's going to work out. I hope they'll get a long-term deal. If not, then the team has set itself up so that they can keep him on the franchise tag and get through the year all right.
Yeah, the franchise tag seems to be a pretty big point of contention for a lot of people. And moving on into some of the other very contended points when it comes to the Cowboys, Greg Hardy is another player that we have to talk about before we let you go. We couldn't do this without talking about him. To put it mildly, I personally am not a fan of the Greg Hardy signing. I think he got away with the cheese in all of this, no matter what his suspension will be and what looms. A big contention among fans and the writers and the analysts and the general public, even to include local politicians. What are your thoughts on all this? Let's compartmentalize this for just a second. Can you explain the signing as it relates to football? No emotion, none of that, just the X's and O's.
Okay. The Cowboys need an edge pass rusher, and they didn't want to break the bank on it. They couldn't go in to pay big dollars on a long-term contract like they would for a free agent that didn't have all of Hardy's baggage. So with Hardy, they structured a deal that is entirely pay for play only. Literally, if he misses a game, he doesn't get paid. If he's suspended, he doesn't get paid. If he doesn't show up for the workouts before, he doesn't get paid. He has to come and perform, and they're going to pay him for what he does. It is the contract is structured strictly in the team's favor, and he only makes out if he does manage to get on the field and perform. So the contract was very smart. If you take out all of the emotions about the off-field stuff, they've got a player who can go out there and get to the quarterback, which is exactly what they want. They've protected themselves against whatever suspension he will have to serve, and we're still, of course, waiting to find out what that's going to be. And I wish that Roger Goodell would get off his backside and get something done about that, so they at least know where they are going forward. But as far as taking care of a problem for the Cowboys, they took care of that. If he is anything at all like he was before, then they've got that pressure coming off the edge that they need. And I think that is a big move for them as far as just what happens on the field.
Now, on the other side of that, you follow all of your fans, you have your writers, and we kind of know what the general public and the media's overall take is. What is the impact that you see of this signing on the Cowboys' legacy? Because, and we're going to touch on this just a little bit later with a couple of the different players, but they're starting to get somewhat of a reputation, and it's weird because nobody considers it bad, really. It's just nobody is really happy with the signing, I guess, emotionally, like you said. What does this mean for the Cowboys, and what could it possibly mean for players in the NFL in the future?
Well, first off, the Cowboys have kind of been down this road before with a guy named Charles Haley. This was a guy that stuffed somebody else in a locker one time in the locker room and had all kinds of problems. I think he was actually diagnosed with some bipolar issues. He eventually got over that, which is kind of goes back to the thing. Hardy made some huge mistakes. Apparently, the big thing was that he was running around with people that were themselves a problem. I don't really know what happened in the domestic violence incident. There's obviously some questions that have been raised now that everything's been dropped. The woman wouldn't show up and testify. Apparently she accepted some kind of a civil settlement. I don't know what's going on there, but the question becomes, do you deny someone the chance to make a living in a very high-paying profession with a very short time span when you can make that money because they did something wrong? Those are questions that are a little bit above my pay grade, but, you've got to give people a chance if they're willing to straighten themselves out. So now we've got to see what's going to happen. And this is part of what goes on in the NFL all the time. You mentioned Adrian Peterson, who I also believe is not going to be showing up playing for the Cowboys because there are so many reasons it doesn't make any sense, and I don't think things would come together. But, he made some huge mistakes, and yet he is a very sought-after commodity. So this is the nature of life, and you're dealing with people in the NFL that are big, physical, and frequently come from very troubled backgrounds. This is the kind of stuff that's going to happen. The NFL is going to have to figure out how to deal with this going forward, and the league's got to figure out how to come up with a consistent, legally justifiable policy for it. And I don't think they're there yet. So that's just going to come. As far as the legacy of the Cowboys, almost every team has some players like that show up on their roster at some point, and they all seem to find ways to justify it to themselves. So. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know how it's going to hurt the legacy. The important thing seems to be what happens on the field, quite frankly. That's where the legacy of the NFL really is determined.
Well, we're talking about any other troubled players. Let's go on to Rolando McClain, who is a trouble guy, but more comical than serious, as it seems, than the Greg Hardy situation. He's struggled with personality conflicts, which isn't funny, but the suspected substance abuse. And what I found really weird was the possible arson of his own home. He came to the Cowboys via trade with the Ravens after he'd already retired, never having played a down for them. He goes to Dallas, becomes a definitive leader, and then decides to test free agency afterwards instead of sticking around. And this is the funny part to me. Instead of going out and finding a new team, he goes out and it's almost like he's the odd kid out in a kickball game. Like nobody wanted to pick him. He has to come back to Dallas with his hat in his hands and walk into Jerry Jones's office and be like, I'm really sorry. Can I have my old job back? It is exactly the definition of players overvaluing themselves. So can you give us your thoughts on his off-the-field actions, how that might play into his on-field play and his entire role with the Cowboys, and what his role will be next year?
Well, I think the problem the Cowboys had was actually more inside the team than what was going on outside. There was word that he was not really eager to go out and practice during the week, and there were some games where there was a sense that he may have been malingering a little bit and not wanting to go out there when the team felt he was ready and able to get out there, and he kind of wanted to hold back. That, I think, was where the question mark was in the Cowboys. It was a matter of his desire to play and put in the work that the Cowboys require. Under Jason Garrett, he wants people that are into the game, that want to go out and put forth the effort and do the work. And they saw times when they didn't see that in Rolando McClain, and that's why they didn't want to step up with a multi-year extension. And it's very rare when you look at it. He's on the second prove-it contract in a row. You just don't normally see that, and so he's got a chance once more to try and go out there and prove that he's worth a 3 or 4 year deal, and at least has a chance to make money. And if you look at the structure of his contract, a little bit like they did with Hardy, if he doesn't perform, he doesn't get all of the contract. There's a lot of bonuses and incentives built into that. So I think the problems the team had with him was not all the off-field stuff, although that might have been a minor factor. It was what they saw going on at practice and in the locker room that made them hesitate. And when he found out that nobody else was wanting to take a chance on him with a multi-year deal, he came back to the Cowboys, where he knows the coaches, he knows some of his teammates, and he seems to be pretty comfortable. He knows he can have success. So I think he's got a chance. The ball is in his court. I think he can be a tremendous asset. We're drooling over having him in the middle with Sean Lee playing on the weak side. We think that could be a fearsome combination. And all he's got to do is step up and show that he can bring to the field what he brought last year.
Going and talking about people who are on prove-it deals and with teams having to really judge what they have, we're going to move on to Sean Lee here. And this is one of my actual favorite linebackers in the NFL, despite the injuries. He has not been real stable health-wise, but he's a great linebacker. And if I could trade him for any linebacker or any player on the Bears, I would do it right now. Give us your thoughts on his future. Is he in a put up or shut up year? At what point will enough be enough and the team decide, you know what, we're going to have to move on if we're going to keep dealing with these kind of situations with him?
Well, it's a year-to-year thing with him. If he can be healthy, he is such a tremendous player. If you've paid a lot of attention to him, he is reacting to the play sometimes before it's snapped. He's that good at reading what the offense is doing. He's a tremendous on-field general. That's what the Cowboys need from him. He is great out there. Plus he gets through traffic. He penetrates. He brings the wood to people. He's a great player, and it's just a matter of his health. It's going to be whether his body is going to be able to cash the checks that his mind writes, because he has a tremendous football mind and seems to be a really high-character guy. I love him to death. He's a great player, and I'm really hoping he has a great year this year. At least he's had, over a year by the time we get to the season. He'll have been in recovery for almost a year and a half. And the word is he's looking really good, and everybody's really excited about him.
Now, we do have to get on to some of the losses that you had as well, and we're going to stick with the linebacker position here. Let's talk a little bit about the departure of both Bruce Carter and Justin Durant. Is there somebody already on the roster to fill these spots? We talk a lot of times with the writers and the editors from SB Nation and kind of ask them, what is the talent that is on there that people don't know about? If there isn't any talent there right now, who are they targeting in the draft or otherwise free agency to kind of prevent that position from backsliding?
Well, the Cowboys' philosophy is to go out and plug the holes in free agency with reasonable deals. They don't go for the big names. They go for the second and third wave guys. They brought in a guy named Brinkley and a guy named, I believe, Gakar. I'm not sure how you pronounce his name. They brought them in so they had players they hope would be serviceable. Gakar is also a special teams guy. But right now, the top three linebackers on the team are Lee McClain and Anthony Hitchens. Hitchens is your Swiss Army knife. He's proven he can play in all three positions. Brinkley is middle linebacker who hopefully could step in and at least stay on the weak side if they had to do something to cover for McClain. So that right now is, I think, the core of what they're doing. In the draft, they may be looking for a strong side type of guy and see if he's better than what they've got. I kind of have linebacker kind of at the lead of the second tier of needs. But they've got, quite a few bodies in right now. So they've got some people to work with and see what they've got. But, yeah, I wouldn't be surprised to see a linebacker get drafted.
That's actually who I kind of have pegged as one of their first or second picks is a linebacker. But we're going to get to all that draft stuff here in a second. Let's move on to Anthony Spencer. He leaves, free agent, goes to the Saints, just recently signed there. Can you give us some insight into why he is no longer a focal point of a defense that he seamlessly mastered over the last better part of a decade, and maybe how he fits into the New Orleans defensive plan now?
Well, he's going back to a 3-4 that also uses a lot of four-man fronts with Rob Ryan, who knows him and knows how to use him. Coming off of the microfracture surgery, it's questionable he's ever going to be back to anything like what he was, although she showed as the year went on that he was coming back and he could provide a good bit of what he used to have. I think he's in a better position for himself. I think the Saints are going to get some good value out of him, but he's a little bit more of a natural 3-4 outside linebacker than he is a 4-3 and on the ground defensive end. He can do a good bit of both, which I think Rob Ryan loves, but I just think the Cowboys felt it was time to move on, and they've got a lot of defensive ends already under contract. However, I also think they're going to be looking the defensive end is one of my three positions that I think there's going to be key for them early in the draft that they'll be looking for.
Now, also on the defensive line, when we're talking pass rushers and sewing up what is the down guys there, Henry Melton, he leaves for Tampa Bay. Someone I kind of consider underrated. Maybe that's more of the Bears fan in me. I understand that all of these guys ended up kind of leaving pretty much as a money thing for the most part. It did not seem, though, that they were really pushing to keep Melton, though. So
he actually seemed to fade a little bit. He was strong the first 5 or 6 games, and then he kind of tailed off a little bit. I just think that was a matter they looked at and said, "Yeah, we think he's on the downhill slide, so we're gonna move on from him." And they had him on a 1-year deal. They didn't have any reason not to let him go. So I think that was just a decision they made with him.
I've heard that quite a bit from a lot of different people, and my response is always, well, he came off of a major surgery the year before. The Bears had franchise tagged him, and then he got hurt, which is the gamble that you take as a player sometimes. So does he leave a big hole there to be filled, or do they seem to have that kind of sewed up pretty well?
Well, we don't know for sure, but I think they're going to be okay. Got a lot of defensive tackles in, too. It's not as good a draft for defensive tackles, but I think they're going to be pretty much okay with that. I'm not too terribly worried about that myself, but that's just me.
Going on to a guy who also doesn't get a whole lot of attention, who is Sterling Moore. The Cowboys already thin at cornerback. They have, issues there already, but losing him almost definitely set them up to be targeting a corner with the first or second pick here?
Yes, I think it does. I don't think it's so much losing him. He was at times very useful to the team, but they were always a little hesitant on him. I think there always were some questions about him and some issues about what he could do. But I don't think that he's a really a huge loss for them. But I do think they're looking definitely for cornerback because of the problems of what they have. They've got Orlando Scandrick, who's quite solid, and it looks like they're going to try to get him out of the slot and put him outside. They've got Brandon Carr, who's seriously underperformed his $50 million contract. They've got Morris Claiborne, who's been hurt virtually the whole time he's been with the team, has never lived up to the 6th-round pick they invested in him. So he's a real issue for them. And they just don't have a lot else there at cornerback. So I see cornerback and running back as the other two positions. First few rounds, that's where I think they're going to be looking, is at those three.
Yeah, the running back situation, obviously, we kind of went over that a little bit earlier. They're definitely going to need to, if like you said, if they're planning on going by committee, they're going to need at least a rookie to mix in there. And that is definitely somebody I see as being one of the top targets in the draft for them. I want to talk a little bit about Dwayne Harris, and just briefly, because I found it really funny that he, for one, that I included him with the defensive side of the ball and not the offensive side, but that's because he's more of a special teams player than anything else. And he leaves the Cowboys and goes to the Giants, who confusingly give him $17 million. Was he worth that? And what happened there? Like, what is that?
I think that's just really a matter that he got a lot more money than the Cowboys were willing to pay for him. The Giants felt he was worth a lot more than the Cowboys did. That's going to be something the Cowboys may be looking at. That's another of my second-tier needs, in my mind, is to find a wide receiver. They've got a kid named Devin Street that saw very little action last year, that they seem to think they've got something coming, but I wouldn't be surprised to be looking for that wide receiver return guy. I think I can see them really needing to replace that. It's just the Giants ran the price tag way out of line on him. I just can't see any way that the Cowboys could ever have come close to that.
So, lastly, I have to ask about Josh Brent, and this is just your complete thought on it. Why have they not cut him? I mean, this is a big discussion guy with the Cowboys, and what I had said earlier was that they're starting to gather a reputation, and it's not very fair because a lot of teams have a lot of players that have rough histories and bad things in their past. And as much as we love to watch the Cowboys play, though, they kind of seem to be the ones that always find their way to the media. And why have they hung on to these guys? We've talked Greg Hardy, we've talked Rolando McClain, but Josh Brent is definitely the one that everybody talks about being, the one that did the most horrible things, finger quotes. And it is perplexing to me that he was able to come back after what kind of happened there. What is your staff and the fans' perspective on all this?
Well, to take a little bit of a counter view, the Cowboys may have saved that guy from becoming a total loss to society and to himself because they gave him some hope and something to work for. I think he's with the Cowboys still because, they're looking for somebody that can go in there and heat up some space and try to maybe get a little pressure there at defensive tackle. I don't know that he's going to be with the team when they get down to the final 53-man roster, there's going to be a lot of competition there, and this could be the end of the road for him. But he came in and contributed enough last year that he was needed, and they did have a lot of need on the defensive line, so I don't think they could throw him out just, because they were a little unhappy with what had happened with him. And what happened to him was a little bit different. It wasn't that he was involved in an assault. He, got drunk and drove a car and lost his best friend as a result. How much more punishment do you want the guy to have? He suffered a lot. And Jerry Brown, the guy that was unfortunately and tragically killed, his family went to bat for Josh Brent and asked the team to please give him a chance and not just throw him away. So Jerry Jones, one of his best things is that Jerry Jones actually cares about the players as human beings more than some of the other owners do, at least in my opinion. And I think they felt like he wanted to recover. He paid his debt to society, and he's come back and is apparently doing what the team's asking him to. And so, what else are you going to do? How far do you punish a guy?
I completely agree with you there, and actually that was kind of the answer I was trying to dig out of you. When we look at some of the players that have had something bad in the past happen to them, and we are trying to figure out why would they do something that they did? How are they going to deal with it? How's the league going to deal with it? And a team being able to take a second chance, and this loosely, and I'm using loosely very, very, very carefully because it's two completely different things, but a team taking a shot on a guy to basically save them or their families, kind of like the Bengals did with Devon Still, keeping him on a roster because it's what was best for his daughter. That kind of translates in the same way. The Cowboys kept him on, and it prevented this guy from probably going down one of the darkest roads and, God forbid, becoming another statistic in suicide or something like that. So a lot to look up to for the defense next season and for the whole team next season.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're optimistic at this point, but it's going to be tough to get back to 12-4. Let's face it, that's a hard thing to do in the NFL under any conditions. They have had some losses, and now they've got to try to replace them with players that they don't really know. So that's kind of important. So one of the things I kind of, whenever you look at who left, you have to remember that the team knows those players better than anybody else does, and there's a reason for all of them leaving. Some of it is just a matter of money. Other times it's that they may not have been quite what we thought they were in the eyes of the staff. And that's what it all comes down to. They made a decision who to keep and who not to keep, and under what conditions they keep some people. Orlando McClain specifically, that was very limited things that they were willing to do for him, but that's where they wound up getting, and so hopefully it's going to work out.
Now, as you said, it's way too early to tell. It's impossible to predict, but we're going to ask you to do it anyway because it's funny, and it's fun to do. Let's look ahead to 2015. And what expectations can we put on this team, not just in terms of record, but what is it going to take for you and the majority of the fans to view this upcoming season as a success? Will it be enough to win the division? Will it be enough to win a playoff game? Are they going to have to make it to the NFC Championship? What is it going to take to get a successful season in 2015?
Wow. First off, I wouldn't be surprised to see them go more like 10-6 and 11-5. As long as they can hold on to the division, that's going to be a tough thing to do, but I think they've got a really good shot at it. I'm not at all sure that Chip Kelly's master plan is going to come together in Philadelphia, whatever he's doing. I think the Giants are going to be, trying to put it all together, but I'm not sure how good they are. We can always rely on a few Eli Manning struggle faces. And Washington's still just kind of a mess. It's going to take them a while. They don't know what they're going to do at quarterback. So I think the team can win the division, and then it's going to depend on what they do in the playoffs. Obviously we're hoping they can put it all together and go all the way, but, if they get a couple of wins in the playoffs, to me it's a successful season.
Let's go ahead and turn the floor over to you. We're very excited for the Cowboys season, and what I want is for a place for you to kind of tell everybody where they need to go to find you, to find the website, where the fan interaction is. what are the upcoming kind of news features, events, things that might be happening on the website that they need to be checking out. Go ahead and plug everything, anything you want. Even if it doesn't relate to football, it's all right. We're here for you.
I'm at bloggingtheboys.com. We like to think of ourselves as the best fan site you're going to find. We think we at times have better coverage than some of the professional writers that follow Dallas. For instance, we pride ourselves in the fact that we were on the Jason Garrett train long before many were. We were fighting the whole thing about Garrett being a puppet and Jerry Jones still running the team, when it was obvious, if you look at what was going on with the team, that was not how the team actually worked or what was going on. We like to think we provide a lot more insight. Of course, right now we're heavy into looking in the draft, going through. We've got lots of draft profiles up. We're tracking very closely who the team brings in for invites and for their Dallas days. There's a chart up of all the known names that you can find on the site, compiled by our one cool customer who does an excellent job on that stuff. We just try to put out all the important information and try to get away from some of the TMZ type coverage. We try to look at the crazier rumors, like this thing about them making a big play for Adrian Peterson. We don't see that happening. All the things would have to fall in line for them to sign him. Just seem impossible to come together. We try to keep it straight. We're definitely fans. We try to be objective with the site. We've got very good rules on our community for people who like to come to a place and not see a lot of cursing and not see a lot of personal attacks and name calling. We police that very closely. Our mods are tremendous. And if you want a nice fan-friendly place to come and talk about the Cowboys, come to Blogging the Boys. I think you'll like what you find there.
Hey, Tom, thank you so much for coming and joining us today. We really appreciate you coming on and taking the time. And we know that you're a busy guy and you have a lot going on with the page. And so any kind of interaction we get from any SB Nation page is great, especially the Cowboys. We were very high on them throughout the season, and we're very excited to see what goes on from here.
Sure. If you guys ever need me again, give me a holler. I'll be glad to join in.
Well, we will definitely be looking to get your opinion right around draft time, see who the Cowboys take and what your initial reaction is going to be. So count on it.
All right. I look forward to it. It looks like an exciting year. A lot of things going on. The NFL's never dull.
No, that is absolutely true. All right. Thanks, Tom.
No problem. It was a pleasure, guys.
All right. Stay on with us right after I cut here, and we'll lead you out. All right.
Once again, everyone, that was Tom Ryle, editor for bloggingtheboys.com. Nice guy. I like him a lot. One thing that he did not mention that I think he deserves credit for, Ron thinks he deserves credit for, Tom is a veteran of our United States Air Force, 20 plus years of service.
That's awesome too. If you're just joining us to listen to Tom talk about the Cowboys, what you don't know about our show is that Kyle and I are also both veterans, and we are big time supporters of the military as well. And I know that all of you folks from Texas are also big supporters.
Actually, is it story time? It's story time.
Let's story time.
It's story time. All right. Big thank you to everybody in Texas, especially Dallas area. The best memory I have in the Army was actually at Dallas Fort Worth. I was 10 or 11 months into my deployment into Iraq. They made me take vacation. I didn't want to. I was having a good time, but whatever. And I just so happened to be transitioning planes at DFW on July 4th, and there was a ridiculous amount of people who didn't feel the need to go to work that day, who just showed up, and way too much. I mean, people were crying, people were hugging me. You know, it was surreal. It was incredibly amazing, and Dallas will always have a soft spot in my heart just for that incredibly warm welcome back home.
The reception that you get from just the people that work there, people that check the passports, people that check you through, like it's not like when you have to go through Baltimore, you know, and everybody's like, please get out of my face and I hate you and I hope that you drink cyanide tomorrow, because that's what happens at just about every airport across the country.
When I was going through in Philadelphia, I couldn't understand a single word that people were saying to me.
Well, and see, there you go. There you have another reason to hate the Eagles. So
there you go, everybody. We hope that you enjoyed our discussion with Tom. We hope that you learned something. I mean, I don't care if you did. It's on you.
But thank you once again to Tom for coming on and kind of giving us the rundown on what he kind of thought about the Cowboys season and what he expects from next year. If you're just joining us from Blogging the Boys and you're just listening to us for the first time, make sure you check out our show. FootballsAmerica.com is where you can find it. That's where you'll find this post. That's where you can comment. You can share it on Facebook from there. You can share it on Twitter from there, on your Google Plus, whatever. You can also find us on Facebook, facebook.com/FootballsAmerica podcast. You can comment there as well. Twitter at FBIA podcast. You can send your tweets. All the mean tweets can go there. You can get us on email, team@footballisamerica.com. Send your emails there, or you can send them right to Kyle or I, Ron@footballisamerica.com, or Kyle, Keil, @footballsamerica.com. Those are the places to get us.
You can also find us on iTunes, on Pocket Cast, on Stitcher, any number of ways you can download a podcast. You can do so, immediately regret your decision, and then write just a horrible review. We enjoy that.
That's one of our favorite things, is when we get terrible reviews, and it happens a lot, and I'm sure you will do it as well. So thank you in advance. And
I'm going to actually put out a request for that, because we were very kind to the Cowboys this year because we were having a good time watching the boys play. They were doing well. They had a great attitude. And after a few years of 8-8, Cowboys fans were not exactly in people's faces about it, unlike a certain, Northwestern Sea Hockey type team. So we didn't get any hate from any Cowboys fans this year. I think the worst we got is, hey, you guys, maybe you aren't giving Tony Romo enough credit. And then we're like, yeah, okay, he's RoboCop. That's about as bad as it got. So we need some Cowboys hate, because my life is just not complete until everybody hates me.
It's true. He it's like it fuels him. It's weird, and I don't understand it. But thank you guys so much for joining us. We appreciate you taking the time to tune in and to support Tom. We hope to get you back and check out the show.
Thank you so much.